Welcome back everybody to Data Science Building Blocks. I'm Joe. For the new people tuning in, this is a series, so I highly encourage you to go back and check out the last videos because we've been building along. However, we are going to switch to a new data set today, so if you're interested in just learning some R basics and Visual Basic in Excel, now is a good time to pick up as well. If you've been with us, don't let R intimidate you. All we're going to do today is download and install it, set it up, and write one line of code to get us some new data that we'll primarily work with in Excel when we run through Visual Basic, otherwise known as VBA. So I have up here two sites that you'll need. I'll link to both of them in the description. The first one is the CRAN or CRAN site. I'll link to this page right here. When you get here, just scroll down, find your country. I'm in the USA, and just click any one of these links. You can see that they're all from reputable universities, and you can install them from any one of these landing pages. So I'll just click the first one. It doesn't matter. You'll see some options here. Download R for Mac, download R for Windows. Just click the one that makes sense for you and go through normal install with all of the default options. Shouldn't give you any issues, but if it does, drop some comments in the comments section and I'll try to help you out. For Rstudio, you'll want to do this next after you install R. This will be the area where you do the programming. And again, we're just doing one line today, nothing crazy. Definitely do the free version, but there are other options out there as well if you want something more robust. I would do this one for 64-bit Windows. Down here there's a Mac option as well, and you'll just drag the output file into your applications folder on a Mac just like you would any other install. But again, let me know if any issues there. Once you actually have it on your computer, open up Rstudio. You'll come to a screen. Looks something like this. You might not have this Untitled 1 script yet. You certainly don't have this one line of code. So if you don't, I'll just not save it and show you how to get there. I did a Control L to clear this console. We could write our line of code right here, but let's click the plus sign and do our script. And we're just going to do this one line of code just to grab our data. I am going to write the data to a CSV, so write.csv. And we want the mtcars dataset. This is a pretty popular dataset. R has built-in datasets that we can just use, grab, write them to a CSV, and that's what we're going to do in this case. It's a small dataset, but it has more metrics, more columns worth of numbers, so we'll work with this one in VBA today. So just do write.csv. We're going to write this to a CSV file, and then I copied my path wherever you saved your Data Science Building Blocks 1 worksheet. Put that path in quotes for your second argument after the comma. So mine's on my desktop on the C drive, and I'm going to call this worksheet Data Science Building Blocks underscore Data Science Building Blocks 2 underscore mtcars.csv. It's important that you put that CSV and put it in quotes. Close your parenthesis. You can click this run button or Control Enter. And again, don't worry about everything you see out here to the right, all these buttons. We'll give you a lay of the land once we actually jump into R, but for now we just want this data. So if I go to the desktop, Windows D is a shortcut to get you to your desktop. I see this file right down here, and I see my Data Science Building Blocks 1 worksheet too, so I'm actually going to do an underscore and do life expectancy for this one. Just to keep organized, I'll do a right-click, new folder, call it Data Science Building Blocks, and I'll put both of these in there. And what I want to do now is go to open the mtcars CSV file. Start to get a feel for the data. As I mentioned, it's not a very large data set. 33 rows. You see some cars. This is miles per gallon, cylinders, the ones and zeros here. I believe this is for automatic or manual transmission, and some other information. So we'll work this one. Now if I actually go out and Google mtcars dataset. I will find some documentation. This stat.eth will probably, yes, right here, tell me what all of the columns mean. So as I said, the automatic transmission, 0 is automatic, 1 is manual. So this seems like a good column to use for an if statement. If we go back, I did Alt-Tab to get back on Windows. You can do AM description here. And before we jump into VBA, let's just do this if statement. So equals 1, then it's automatic. Let me just double check that again. No, equals 0 is automatic, 1 is manual. And you can see we only have 1s or 0s, so 1 is manual, comma, and then if it's not 1, this is your false argument, it's automatic. So you can just write automatic, and that's all we need. And we can click that, double click the edge, and we'll see that we have manual and automatic descriptions here for column J. Now to actually go into VBA, why don't we practice VBA by doing some conditional formatting on this AM column. You can get to VBA by going to the developer ribbon and clicking Visual Basic, or doing Alt F11 on Windows. That's normally what I do. If you don't see this VBA on the developer ribbon, again, I did this last video, go to more options, add-ins. You won't see this analysis tool pack here, VBA, that's what you want. Go to Excel add-ins and make sure it's checked here. If it's not there, browse for it, bring it in, check it, click OK. I'll just click Visual Basic here, and you want to navigate to the sheet that you're on. That's generally best practice. I have another worksheet open, so make sure you're on the right worksheet. Data Science Building Blocks 2, mtcars, sheet 1. Right click it and do Insert Module. And we want to start our code here with a sub, and this is us just writing a macro. If you've heard the term macro before, that's what we're doing. I have a notepad open with some code, and I'll take you through it. So I'm going to put it off to the side, somewhere where I can see it. So we'll start out with a sub. You can call this anything. I called it my macro, or you can do it a sheet 1 macro, or whatever you want. Just something recognizable. We can really do like conditional formatting, because that's what we're actually going to write in. And I just clicked the next line and it did end sub. You can see on my code over here, that's how you want to end every macro. So that's nice. We're going to do all of our work in between the sub macro and end sub. It's good practice to activate the worksheet that you're on. We only have one worksheet here, so this will work without this worksheet's Data Science Building Blocks 2 mtcars activate. So I'll leave it off for now, but just remember it's good practice to add that in if you have multiple worksheets. The next lines, data start, data end, that's 2 through 33. There is a better way to make this more dynamic, but just to illustrate, and so it makes sense the first time, this goes down to 33 rows, and we want to do the conditional formatting starting in row 2. So we're going 2 to 33. We have them defined as variables in our code, but we don't actually need to do that here either. We can just actually write for I equals 2 to 33. And I'll get into explaining what that line is doing in a second. So you can do the data start equals 2 or data end equals 33. If you do it, do both, or you can just start your code. I'll do a couple spaces here, do for I equals 2 to 33. So we're going to iterate from rows 2 to 33. This is a loop. I haven't explained this yet, and you may have heard some people say that VBA isn't valuable and you don't want to learn it, but think it still has some good use cases, and it's really the building blocks for Python. You know, a lot of the same fundamentals you'll do in here, you'll do in Python. So we're just going to cover VBA. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on it. Python and some other coding languages are obviously better and more widely used. VBA is not something that you'll see on job boards very often, but it's worth going through, and it's worth starting here in Excel where you're familiar with everything, and then we can move on to bigger and better things. But for loops here, I equals 2 to 33. The point of a for loop is to start somewhere and then iterate through everything you have, whether it be rows or columns. We're going to start and end and repeat an action with every row or every column. The point is to do it once, do it again, keep doing it until we're all the way through the loop. So in this case, we're going to conditionally format in row 2, row 3, row 4, row 5, all the way through 33. So you start your for loop like that in VBA, do an enter key, and then a tab. This is good practice to tab everything. In Python, you absolutely have to do this. In VBA, sometimes you can get away without doing it. I like to do spaces and indent when you're doing for loops and also if statements. So we'll start an if statement. We can do if cells. This is where it's dynamic. I is equal to 2. We're going to start in 2, but we don't want to hard code 2 because we don't want to stay in 2, right? If we do I here, we'll move from 2, the loop will go again, then we'll move to 3, then we'll move to 4. Since we're only conditionally formatting this AM column though, it's always going to be in column 10, right? If I highlight, you saw that we're times 10C, that little icon above my cursor, we're in the 10th column. We're not going to move columns if we're just doing this column J. So what we can do is do I10. So then we'll go from 210 to 310 to 410 all the way down the list. So if it equals 1, then we space again. We can indent the if statement. That's good practice. We'll do that same cell, I10 dot, and then this is just VBA. You have to know this. In this case, that dot interior dot color equals VB green means that I want to access color from interior and use the built-in VBA green color to make these cells green when it equals 1. So interior dot color equals VB green in this case. So if it doesn't equal 1, we know we only have one other option in this case. Let's start an else statement. We don't need to do like elifs or anything like that. There's only 2 options. Indent that again, and if it's not, we'll do the same thing. Cells I10 dot interior color, but we'll make it red, so it's just VB red. And you can end your if. You have to end your if just like you end your sub, but that's also all we want to do in the loop, so we want to end the loop as well. We don't want to end the loop, actually, we want to start it over again, and it will go all the way to 33 and stop when it gets there. So 2, 3, 4, all the way to 33, end sub. Now we can run this right now. We're done by doing a run sub user form or an F5, but just save it for now. So save, and this is perfect. So it's going to yell at you, do a no on this, and we're going to change this to an Excel macro enabled workbook. This will enable it to save and keep our modules, our macros that we've coded into VBA. Now if I do file save, it shouldn't give me any trouble. I can actually X out of this, it'll bring me back to here. And you may have seen something like this before. You can attach this macro to like a shape or something like that, and that's what I'll do. I'll insert a square. If you go to insert shapes square, you could just put a square here and call it, I think if you double click, yeah, you can see your cursor there. We'll call it macro. And let's center it, do it, enter so that it's actually in the center. And what we can do now is right click it, assign macro, and then you'll see whatever you named it, it should pop up here, and you can click it and click OK. Now the shape, you'll notice when I hover over it has a hand. If I press it, go ahead and click it, it runs that macro, and looks like we did everything correctly. All the ones are green, all the zeros are red. So I know I'm going to get questions on this, so do an Alt F11 or go back to the developer ribbon to open up your macro once again. I use I here in the for loop. This can be absolutely anything. It doesn't matter. This is just your starting variable. I could have done A, I could have done J. It doesn't matter. People normally use I because you're iterating through. At least that's why I think it's generally used. But let's just demonstrate. If I did A here, I would have to change all of the I's in here to A. And then I'd be in cell 210, 310, 410, etc. as we go through the loop. So change them all to A, and then you'd have to do next A. You know, this can be VB blue. You can see how if we change the code, this will then change it on our sheet. So save this now and X out of it, go back to our sheet. If we manually change this column to white and then run the macro again, okay, now you see it doesn't matter that we changed it to A and it changed the red to blue. So that's all I wanted to cover today. This was a pretty heavy video, but I think it's a good start, and we'll keep expanding. Save your work, and we'll see you in the next one.